Welcome to Business Spotlight. I am Rob Andrew, and today I am joined by Geri Silverstone from Silverstone Communications. Good afternoon, Geri.
Good afternoon, Rob.
Um, Geri, please, can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and Silverstone Communications?
Well, we are a communications consultancy that works within the built environment. And what that really means is that we help our clients to get results in getting the best planning decisions for not just for themselves, but also for the communities which they're impacting upon. Nobody likes planning. Nobody likes buildings going up or infrastructure being delivered, but we all benefit from it. We all have better life experiences as a result of good planning decisions. And actually, good planning decisions happen when clients listen to communities, engage with communities, learn from communities. Once upon a time, the approach that people used to take about planning is that they would decide something, they would announce it, and then spend years defending it. Actually, the now new approach is about listening, engaging, and learning, ensuring that you've got the best decision. You come to the best decisions. My own background, and I've got quite what I think is always quite a predictable background for somebody in my shoes. I went off and did a politics degree, and then with politics degrees, apologise to people out there if I'm going to offend, but you normally end up doing one of two things with a politics degree. You either go and work in McDonald's, or that you go and work in the House of Commons. Thankfully, I did the latter, and I worked in the House of Commons, where I got to understand the political process at first hand. And then my boss lost his seat in the 1997 general election, and therefore I lost my job. I then did a number of other political advisory jobs in local authorities, and then, as my dad said, I got a proper job. And in that, I actually went to work at Heathrow to help them with the construction of Terminal 5. And I've always worked within the stakeholder engagement space ever since then.
Wow, that must have been a hell of a baptism then, the working on Terminal 5, the planning and the communication around that. Tell me a little bit more in that.
Yeah, well, don't forget that Terminal 5 is, sorry, can you just read me that line again, and I'll answer that properly.
Yeah, so it really must have been interesting to go into working on the communications around the planning for Terminal 5, because obviously there's a lot of debate there was at the time.
Yeah, Terminal 5 was the longest public planning inquiry in the history of planning inquiries, 4.5 years to decide how to use a disused slurry works in between the two world's busiest runways. And I know my kids always get really frustrated with me whenever we go to Terminal 5, and I go, kids, I remember when this was a slurry works. And it was all about the BAA, who were then the owners and operators of Heathrow, misunderstood what the community wanted. They misunderstood, and probably were a little bit arrogant in terms of taking it for granted that they were going to get their own way. They didn't. And so therefore, there were real challenges there that actually a lot of organizations now have learned from. And it's interesting, living in Mid Sussex, seeing what's happening at Gatwick at the moment, and their approach to their runway addition. Actually, they've now learned, actually, you really need to take the community with you and engage, and you can't take the community for fools.
Yeah, fascinating. I mean, it's just a journey. It has changed, hasn't it, in a relatively short period of time, people's approach.
Yeah, and I think rightly so. It's only correct that these big infrastructure developments or big housing schemes actually do take stakeholders' concerns and anxieties really, really seriously. That's actually, people talk in planning about planning wins, but the problem about planning wins is it's just that somebody's lost. And actually, I very much rather get people to talk about planning benefits, and it's about the whole community benefiting from these projects, not just one sector or over another.
Understood. Geri, what as a business owner now, what would you say has been your biggest learning?
Oh, yikes. I think it's about trusting your instinct, and actually when something, we often talk about making sure that we have the empirical evidence and we can go through evidence and after evidence and decision after decision. But sometimes if something doesn't feel right, or indeed actually more positively when something does feel right, actually go for it and actually have the strength of character to go through it. And that's probably why I enjoy actually being the chief exec of quite a small organization. In the past, I've worked for some large, big bureaucratic organizations, and there's nothing more frustrating sitting in meeting after meeting after meeting to make the decision which should have been made 3 years ago. So I think that is one thing. And I started Silverstone in March 2020. Of course, March 2020, nothing else in the world was happening. And just so as the world was imploding around me, I decided to set up by myself. Now, some people might say that was extremely foolish or brave. I'd like to think it was brave. And actually, the evidence is that it was brave. And actually, we're doing very well.
Excellent. Indeed, yeah, very brave. As you say, not a lot else was going on in March 2020. Interestingly, I mean, in terms of what you do and in the realms of communication, PR, how do you really stand out from any of your competitors? What do you do differently?
Well, I think we are passionate about what we're doing. We are knowledgeable about the communities which we are working within. We understand the world, both from the client, but also more importantly, the communities in which we're focused on. There's no point in being able to say to the client, we speak your language. Frankly, that's irrelevant. We can actually speak the community's language. We know what is of concern, what is important, what is vital to the communities which we work in. And I think I had lunch with a client the other day who was talking about one of my competitors, and frankly, the service that they were offering was horrendous. I think I would have probably sacked anybody in my team who provided such poor service and poor value for money.
So if I hear you correctly, it's about that importance of staying and remaining local, and so that you can demonstrate that understanding of what the local requirements are.
Exactly, and we've got we have a number of our clients who are based in Mid Sussex, and we know what is important in Mid Sussex. And we don't take that for granted. We won't fly, some of my competitors who are big London consultancies who will fly in and fly out, advise their clients, not really understanding what the audience is after, will advise them poorly. That then will impact upon their reputation. Mm-hmm. And those consultancies are charging an awful lot of money because they've got big swanky London offices to maintain. And that for me, whilst I've got breath in my body, that's one of the things that will get me out of bed in the morning, is knowing that I'm offering value for money, but a local product as well.
Excellent. So important, Geri. So thank you for that. And that leads me, I suppose, to the next question, really. When you're looking at recruiting for your new team members, or when you have to perhaps select any freelancers, what are you looking for in them before taking them on?
No, that's a really good question, because there is a rude answer to that, which is what I said to somebody recently, and this will have to get edited out. But I do make a simple policy of not employing assholes, and I think the more editable response to that is, what I'm looking for in my team are people who share the same values that I do. As a small company, I can keep quite close control on the products that we're delivering. And actually, if you're not capable of meeting those values, then you're not going to do well in Silverstone. And what I'm after are people who are passionate and dedicated about making an impact and making a positive impact on the communities which we work in.
That's interesting. And when you're sitting in front of them, how do you pull that out of them? Don't mind me asking, how do you get to that point of understanding that their values do match yours and Silverstone's?
Yeah. Well, I think some of it is around checking, do they understand what local government is all about, local politics? Are they passionate? Are they interested? Does that motivate them? Actually, do they read the Mid Sussex Times? Are they avid readers of the Argus? And actually, if they look at you snootily and go, "Oh well, that's beneath me, and I just want to be the next minister for transport," then you need to think, well, hang on, yeah, no, we're not going to get on. But what I want are people who are real advocates for the communities that they live in. We've got a number of elected councillors and former councillors that are on the team. Now, sometimes they make the worst consultants, but actually, if they're good councillors, then they'll make good consultants, because it's all about active listening. It's all about being empathetic. It's all about wanting to make a difference.
Excellent, excellent, very clear. Thank you for that. Geri, looking a bit further ahead then, and if you think about the next 5 years, what do you see as your biggest challenges?
Well, it's an interesting one. Economically, I think we're all going to be a little bit challenged in terms of what could happen to the markets, and especially in our sector, where the markets sometimes do go a little bit become quite anxious. But I think actually I'm seeing great opportunity out there, that for once, planning is going to be one of the hot topics of the general election. People are actually talking about it down the pub, which I think probably never in my career, that's been a hot topic of conversation. But it's really important. So actually, yes, there will be challenges, but actually the opportunities outweigh the challenges for us.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, hot topic, particularly across Mid Sussex. So I can see the opportunities absolutely, and in terms of how do you think that's going to evolve, though? Is this the way that we're really going to see progressing for the next 10 years of more and more planning, more and more development, or you think it's just the period we're in right now?
Well, what we know is that there is a housing crisis, that people have the right to live in decent accommodation. People have the right to have access either to private accommodation or to private rented, or indeed local authority rented accommodation. So people have, that is not going to go away. What we need to make sure is that those schemes that come forward in terms of accommodation and residential, that they're the right ones. What needs to come forward is the right mitigation in terms of airport expansion at Gatwick. Gatwick is on growth, and therefore there are lots of challenges about how we engage. I think it's how we break through the cycle of cynicism. In my line of work, I've been accused of many things. People will say, "Does your mother know what you do for a living? She'd be ashamed of you." Or you could sell sand to the Arabs, and all I'm trying to do is trying to make decisions better and impact more positively. So those are the challenges. It's breaking through that cycle of cynicism. Or alternatively, the other thing that you get is the conspiracy theorists. And I've worked on projects in Mid Sussex where people go, I know what's really going on. And it's like, really? Because I frankly have no idea. This is a straightforward scheme. It's not, but it's being funded by the Russians, or it's being funded by the Chinese. No, it's not. If only organizations were that clever. And so it's actually breaking through that cynicism, which is a real challenge.
Yeah, definitely. With so many different communication channels these days, it's you get a lot more of that cynicism as well, I imagine.
Oh yeah, it's so much easier to be a keyboard warrior and to fire something off in late at night on Facebook than actually thinking about that seriously and sensibly, and actually what that means for people's everyday lives.
Understood. Geri, what or who inspires you at the moment?
I I think the thing that inspires me is making sure that we make the right decisions. I've got children who, will really struggle to get onto the housing ladder, that will really struggle to have the mobility to move around the country freely. And though, my children are some of that motivation of actually saying we need to get this right. When I worked at Heathrow, the announcement from the government, it was Alistair Darling, who's the Transport Secretary at the time, made a decision on the third runway at Heathrow. 2 days later, my daughter was born. At Christmas, she's going to be 20, and Heathrow is no further forward with a third runway. And it's still got the same problems that it was having 20 years ago. That is a disgrace. And that, in terms of actually all of our futures, is a real embarrassment. And so that sort of inspires me to go, hopefully by the time I retire, or indeed by the time my daughter is retired, that actually you'd have seen Heathrow operating on the international competitive basis that it should be.
Yeah, I mean, Geri, that's really, it's such a good point. Everything moves. We expect things instantaneously now, but yeah, politically we seem to be moving much slower. Interesting times. Geri, if I was to ask you for, what advice would you give to a young person contemplating opening up, starting their own business? What bit of advice would you give them?
Do it. What's the worst that could happen is that it could fail. Or indeed, actually, the worst that could happen is that your dreams might not be fulfilled. I took a long time getting to where I am now. It's a bit like dating, really, is that you have to kiss a lot of frogs. Yes, that's the right analogy, isn't it? Yeah. But you do have to, if at first you don't succeed, we'll try again. It's like kissing frogs, and eventually you will find your prince. And so, I think just do it.
So just jump in, just go for it, follow your dreams.
Yeah, but also make sure, I think the other piece of advice is make sure that you've got a good team around you. Always have people who are better than you around you. I certainly have got some wise heads who advise me. I have a non-executive director, I have a business coach, I have a marketing consultant who make sure that I keep my feet on the floor, and actually my partner does as well, and she makes sure that I don't get too carried away. So make sure that you've got a good team around you.
That's great advice. Thank you for that, Geri. And in terms of any news or announcements from Silverstone that you would like to share with us?
Well, the team's getting bigger. We're always in the business of recruiting, so if what we've said today makes you interested, then do get in touch. As we move closer towards the general election, we'll be bringing out some new services, some new products, in order to meet, to help clients move around what is going to be a year of change, a year of transition. So it's all very exciting stuff.
So lots happening, lots going on. And Geri, how best to connect with you?
I'm always at the end of my phone, so therefore always at the end of LinkedIn, or contact us through hello@silverstonecommunications.co.uk.
Excellent. Well, Geri, thank you very much for your time this afternoon, and thanks for your insights. Really valuable stuff you've shared, so I really appreciate that, and I wish you continued success as the business grows.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.